Senator Irene Aguilar, who is, I think you all, many of you probably know, is one of the great champions of healthcare in Colorado, I think, and has been doing a fantastic amount since entering the Senate. 3 years ago, 3.5 some years ago, has done quite a bit to make change piece by piece, and to take aspects here and there that can be changed legislatively while working on the big picture of getting universal health care. So she's really accomplished a lot for Colorado and still has a lot left on the agenda, and will give us a little bit of perspective now, I think, on some of the realistic ways that this could be implemented, that our goals could come to fruition legislatively and in Colorado, one way or the other. So, Senator Irene Aguilar.
Hi everyone, and I know a lot of you have already heard me speak, and I apologize for repeating this story, but I think it's important. The first story I want to repeat is that when I was campaigning for President Obama and watching healthcare reform from the comfort of my own home, I thought, what a wimp, not even letting those single-payer people into the hearings and not even talking about it. And after about a week in the Colorado legislature, I said, oh my God, how did he get that done? because politics is messy. And politics, I actually went in specifically to run a bill for universal health care, and I had a very powerful person in my caucus who did not want me to introduce that bill, and could have in a normal setting kept it from happening, but thankfully the Senate President believed in what I believed in, and allowed me to go ahead and introduce the bill. And I was smart enough to ask that the bill not go to this woman's committee but go somewhere else, so that it could pass out of committee, and then was asked to broker a deal where I didn't go forward with it until it happened to be the year that Senate Bill 200 was being worked on. And so because Senate Bill 200 was a bipartisan bill, I thought, they said, well, let this go through and then you can run your bill. And I thought, okay, that'd be great. And if you recall, that was when Obamacare happened, and suddenly what happened was that the bill did not pass until the Friday before the session ended. And so I got to do second reading on the floor of the Senate the day before session ended. It was going to pass by a voice vote, but I reversed it and asked for it to be postponed indefinitely because the Republicans had asked for something called division, which meant that your vote was recorded. And we didn't want, knowing that I couldn't get it to the House and I couldn't get it out, we didn't want people to pay a financial consequence for a bill that wasn't going anywhere. It only took 1 year before I learned that it's really hard to get a bill through if you don't have the support of the other members of your caucus. And here's the interesting thing. The way in which I don't have people's support is that nobody really believes that it can happen. So it has nothing to do with whether or not it's the right thing to do. It has everything to do with belief. And this is one of those situations in which your own beliefs defeat you, right? Because if you really don't think it can happen, it's not going to happen, because you're not going to do anything to make it happen. So the second year, I had learned enough about politics to know it was an election year, and I wasn't going to be able to get anybody to vote for the bill, so I didn't introduce it because I thought, why burn my good, will with my caucus members? And then the third year, I actually introduced it as a referred ballot measure that would have modified our Constitution and been voted on by the people. Now, I did it that way because in order for it to leave the Senate, it would have needed 2/3 of the vote of the Senate to leave, because it was a constitutional ballot measure. And what I thought, quite honestly, was that if I couldn't get any Republican to vote for it, the money that would be spent to defeat this at the ballot was so much that it wasn't going to pass anyway. And I thought at least bringing it forward as this constitutional amendment gave me the opportunity to talk with all the legislators about why I was doing this and what I was hoping to achieve and what the evidence was behind it. And then I also introduced a bill to create an interim committee on how could we as a state move forward in terms of looking toward implementing universal health care. What I didn't realize was that there was a plot going on behind my back to kill that bill in the House of Representatives. So I got the committee through the Senate, and it was killed in committee in the House of Representatives by one of my own colleagues I think it took me about 3 months before I could talk to him again, not that I'm a sore loser or anything. But anyway, so that was another interesting lesson. You'll notice this year I did not introduce anything because, again, it's an election year. And I know that people are not going to take this kind of chance in an election. But let me tell you what I've learned in the meantime. What I've learned in the meantime is that, realistically, we probably have to make a constitutional change because the way you finance a single-payer system involves charging everybody something to pay into it. And according to Ledge Council and the legislature, that if you're going to levy any kind of tax or premium on people, and it's based on income, it's subject to Tabor. And so you will need to do something constitutionally to exempt this from Tabor. And so knowing that, I think that realistically this will need to come through a citizens initiative. I don't think you'll be able to get 2/3 of a vote out of the legislature to get something on the ballot that changes Tabor in this dramatic of a fashion. In the interim, what I've done is with the Colorado Foundation for Universal Healthcare and Cooperate Colorado, we obtained a grant to have my idea for universal healthcare in our state analyzed by a health economist who went through it and said, so one of the sections of the Affordable Care Act says that if a state can cover at least as many people with at least as rich of a benefit, you can apply for a waiver from the Affordable Care Act and get all the tax credits and money that the Affordable Care Act is putting towards your state and use it for your own state health plan. There also are provisions that allow a state to apply for a waiver for Medicaid. And so you could separately apply for a Medicaid waiver to have all the Medicaid funds come to your state. And then there are no waivers for Medicare, but you could apply to be a Medicare Part C plan and have your state be a Medicare Part C plan. I call my plan a cooperative because a cooperative is an idea that's not so offensive to conservative and rural people. The idea is that we all put money in and we all benefit. And the shareholders in a cooperative are the people. And the one thing I can tell you going around the state is that people get that. They understand that right now the healthcare industry is not beholden to them, but to profit. And they like the concept of the healthcare industry being beholden to people and not to profit. And that's an easier thing to sell. And cooperative is a model that people understand. My concept is that we apply for the Medicaid waiver, we apply for the Affordable Care Act waiver, and then we apply to be a Medicare Part C plan. We pool these monies into a single risk pool that then pays for everybody's health care. But the way in which you get your health care is that you go to the Connect for Health Colorado Exchange and you pick the system through which you're going to get health care. And the system is given funds with which to deliver your health care, sort of like Kaiser is. And they compete against each other for your business. They want to get you into their market. Now, they wouldn't compete as highly for Bob May here as they would for this young person over here because they think, oh, he's going to be expensive, right? Yeah. So they would be given a risk-adjusted payment, and the risk would be adjusted based on things that you can't lie about, like your age and maybe your educational level or your income, because those are actually pretty good surrogate markers for health and what your health care costs are going to be. And so the competition, again, exists between the different people delivering health care to innovate around how they can most effectively and efficiently deliver health care. It's not fee-for-service, so there's no incentive for doing more if you don't need more, but it is based on consumer satisfaction. So if you're somebody who says no, nobody's going to want to work for you. Because of my role in the Senate, I've had the opportunity to go out and visit multiple rural areas, including Montrose and Grand Junction, and I actually got the opportunity to sit at a table with doctors and Rocky Mountain Health Plans and the hospitals in Grand Junction, and what they said to me was, Senator Aguilar, can you apply for a waiver and pilot your plan in Mesa County, because we could make that work, because they recognize the value of this. And I said, I don't think I could do that, but I would love for you to talk to Republican legislators about this and why you're so willing to do this. And so I think I agree with TR, it's going to have to be state by state. Each state is in a different place. I think Colorado is in a unique position because we expanded Medicaid, we are implementing the exchange, we have, there is a Republican 208 commissioner who I heard at a panel this summer say, you know, employers need to realize that ultimately they pay for the health of everyone in the population. And so we understand healthcare enough that I think we can get to that point where people realize we're gonna pay for it anyway. And in our Western Slope, we have somebody who lives that model. They had a prenatal care program that even covered prenatal care for undocumented women on our Western Slope because it decreased their NICU costs 45%. So they have data on their own knowing this happens, and now they're doing integrated behavioral health because they realize that's going to save them costs on the Western Slope in Republican Grand Junction. So I think we have a lot to build on here. I don't think we can come up with one idea that will work all around the state. I think we need to allow the local areas to innovate and build on the base that they have. We don't just give out all the money because we're going to need to be sure we keep enough hospitals open. We have emergency care, that if somehow suddenly everyone gets leukemia from Rocky Flats, we have the money for that, you know, sort of a reinsurance pool held back. And there'll be some bulk negotiation across the state. And I don't know how prices will end up being set. I mean, I think that's something that the less we try and control and we allow people to put local pressure on, the better it will come out to suit that community. So, so that's my thoughts and where I'm trying to head.
Great.
And in the meantime, do what I can within the legislature.
The idea of the pilot in Grand Junction is really appealing and compelling, and I'm not sure why it can't be done. And maybe that's another discussion another time, or maybe somebody else will ask that. But I also wanted to ask, you know, that what you mentioned with the prenatal care for the undocumented. I think I've seen that 40%, both nationwide and in Colorado, of those uncovered after Obamacare would be undocumented. Is that right? About 40% of those who are left uncovered?
40% in Colorado, for sure.
Yeah.
So the initial estimate was that we'd be left with